My name's Harold Yu. I'm a partner at Oric. We're one of the names up here. Oric's a global law firm. We are based here in New York City. We also have a big team in Silicon Valley representing lots of technology startups. And so that's where we kind of connect here. We do a lot of these events. I'm going to sit down if you want to sit down, so it's up to you. But we do a lot of these events, and one thing I typically do when I start the event is try to find out who the audience is, because I think it's helpful to kind of understand a little bit about who you are. When I do these in Silicon Valley, I can tell you I almost 100% get the I'm an entrepreneur, right? That's especially true today. But I'm curious who we have here. So startups, people at startups, is that? Handful, okay. People at larger companies? Investors? Okay, others? All right, great. All right, sounds good. Thank you, that's helpful. Okay, so this is great. I think that was a very good introduction to this topic, and I think this will be a great discussion. Let's start, Michael, by just talking about yourself. In fact, so Michael and I just got to know each other about 20 minutes ago here and had a nice conversation. I think we should kind of just share that with the crowd here. I think that sounds good. So, Michael, tell us a little bit about your background in terms of how you started in the industry, how you got to this point, et cetera.
Yeah. I originally actually was born in Ireland. I grew up in Dublin, just south of the city. Went to school there and graduated from Trinity College with an engineering degree. That was back in 1986, and unfortunately Ireland's economy wasn't so great at that time, and like most of my classmates, I headed abroad looking for work, looking for a job. I actually landed in a small company in Tokyo in Japan. I worked there for about 5 years as a software engineer and did a little bit of electronics, hardware work as well. And after those 5 years, I got recruited by a Santa Clara company in Silicon Valley to go work for them. They were very interested in the Japanese market and in engineers that were, comfortable both with the language and the culture and whatever with regard to servicing and building products for the Japanese market. So that brought me to Silicon Valley. That was 1991 or so. After a short stint with that company, I moved on to Cisco Systems. Cisco was still a very small company at that time. It was public. That was back in the day where companies would go public and kind of grow from there rather than do larger and larger PE rounds and stay private. I did work at Cisco for about 6 years until 1997, when I left to join Juniper Networks when it was a very small company. I was one of the founding engineers in the engineering department at Juniper. Worked there for several years up until 2004. So went from inception through prototype machines to first customers to bringing the company public and scaling out the engineering and the technology. In 2004, I actually left Juniper and founded my own company. It was a company that was trying to disrupt enterprise networking market, which at that time Cisco was the dominant player. It had the dominant market share, and they were still selling and shipping products that I'd worked on almost a decade earlier. So set about doing next generation product. Built a team. Cisco maybe were paying more attention at that stage, and they actually bought the company, and we developed the rest of the technology and the product within Cisco, and brought it to market. Turned out to be a very successful product. Ended up at $1 billion run rate kind of product profile. That brought me up till about 2010, where I actually transferred back to Juniper for a couple of years, and then ultimately joined my two co-founders of Skyport, and we moved over to Sutter Hill Ventures, where we worked as entrepreneurs in residence for a couple of months, thinking and brainstorming, and we had the idea for Skyport, and Sutter Hill funded that, and that's how Skyport got its beginnings.
That's great, Michael. So I think you and I share a lot of experience in Silicon Valley over a lot of years now, and we've seen the evolution basically of IT. So maybe now talk a little bit about just what you've seen from that in terms of how has architecture evolved over that time frame, and what is it today?
Sure, it's been an amazing transformation. I mean, it remains, whenever I think about it, it really remains just remarkable to me how quickly things have transformed. If I think back to I'm not that old, I'm 50 years of age. If I think back to my own beginnings of my career, we were not connected. There was an internet, but there was no business presence or consumer use of the internet. There was no World Wide Web. There was no browsers. There were no smartphones. There was virtually no email. And computing and enterprise IT was generally a collection of small, separated, segregated islands of applications and compute, stitched together by a mirage of different networking protocols and technologies. I mean, certainly one of the very competitive advantages that Cisco had back in the early to mid 90s was we were willing to do any and all types of networking, all protocols. So, these are things that are they've gone by the way of the dodo bird a long time now. DECnet, AppleTalk, Banyan Vines, X25. The list goes on and on and on. And our compute was dominated by kind of proprietary, separated systems. You had SGI systems and Sun systems and mainframes and various mini computers, and maybe there was a little bit of desktop and personal computing, but not much. You kind of take that view from mid-90s or early to mid-90s, and you move forward 20 years to where we are today, and the change is absolutely incredible. First of all, everything is connected, and it has to be connected. It's been a huge benefit to businesses. It's as they've been connected to their partners, to their customers, as it's been easier for their employees to stay connected and to do their work. It's been a huge revolution, a huge change in how enterprises and how businesses operate, and that has been an incredible benefit to the business. Of course, the technology has also brought whole new businesses, big tech companies, completely different business models for various industries. But it's been a very radical change. And what unfortunately has changed along with it is that as we went to a very connected world, we also produced a set of bad actors and a set of technologies that allows those bad actors to come and attack us. And they have been doing that, and it's been accelerating. They've refined what they can do. They've refined the technology that they use. And that openness, that connectedness that has driven such huge business benefits has also landed us in a world where cybersecurity and looking after our people, our assets, our endpoints, and our servers and our server workloads, which is where Skyport focuses, is now ever more important, and we have to adjust to that reality, and we have to somehow figure out how to get ahead of those bad actors.
So for Michael, for someone like myself who's not in the industry per se every day, thinking about cybersecurity is actually very kind of overwhelming because it's a daunting kind of domain, right? And so how does for a beginner like myself, how would you organize it? How would one think about this kind of from an organization standpoint? How do you break it down in terms of sectors and so forth?
Yeah, I think you're right. It is daunting. It's quite noisy, and we have complicated environments. There's a lot of complicated technology that goes into enterprise IT and into the environment, along with a lot of people and the complexities therein. From my point of view, I kind of try and simplify it into really three categories or three areas. The first is my perimeter defense. I want to keep, as much as I can, the bad actor out of my environment. That is required. It absolutely is required, and we need to get better at it, actually. That said, it's kind of like the evolution of cities. Once upon a time, I had a walled city. I would reinforce the wall, and I would hope the wall would protect me, and everything inside the city was left open. We are, unfortunately, in a world where, as much as we try on the perimeter, the bad actor is extremely creative with extremely powerful technology, and they're going to get through the perimeter. So a perimeter alone is not going to suffice, but it is required. And that is a huge part of the security business. And that is in terms of perimeter defense and proactive protection, as well as the analytics and the detection to know if and when someone has violated the perimeter. The other sector of it that I really think about is the whole aspect of endpoint security, which really involves the habits and the human aspects of most of the people involved, certainly in an enterprise situation. That is, looking after the handsets, looking after the PCs, the laptops, the tablets, and making sure they stay as clean as possible, make sure my people are using best practices as much as possible. I mean, to Bill's point, that is a never-ending, effort. It's just human nature that makes that challenging, but that's something that we need to continue to work on and to make as good as possible. And then there's the area that Skyport really focuses on, which is the third part of kind of the enterprise IT stack, which are the servers. And ultimately, the bad actors are generally aiming at the servers. They may use the perimeter, they may use endpoints, they may use human engineering to allow themselves to get in and to get closer to the servers. But what they're ultimately looking for is the sensitive data and the critical systems that are housed in the servers within enterprise IT. And it used to be not so long ago, all those servers were inside physically the enterprise. Now those servers can be distributed. They can be in the form of SaaS services. They can be out in public clouds. They can be in dedicated clouds. They can be in co-locations, as well as the traditional servers that you would find in enterprise IT, comprising the data center, the DMZ, and to a degree, branch computing. And so for me, at the first cut, I kind of segregate the security problem down into those three domains. And as I say, that Skyport is focusing on the kind of security of the server domain.
So tell us about that. What does Skyport do? What are you guys doing, and how are you?
So, well, I'm going to try and stay away from the technology and focus on the business aspects of it, given that was Bill's advice just a few minutes ago. In a nutshell, what Skyport produces, the Cybersecurity solution, is a cloud-managed, on-premise, secure server. It's a server that we have built from scratch to have security built in by default inside the server. It is a virtualized platform on which enterprise IT runs critical server workloads. Those workloads might be infrastructural in nature that handle identity, email exchange, domain name services, DHCP services, email servers, virtualization servers, and control systems. The kinds of systems that are used to operate the servers in enterprise IT, and the kinds of systems that hold very critical information that bad actors are going to try and get to leverage that critical information to then forward their attacks. The kind of solutions and the values and where we see it deployed is areas that are either very, very critical systems, so by definition you know that you have a set of bad actors both inside and outside that are going to try and compromise those systems. Identity and Active Directory is a very common one. We've engaged with many customers on that kind of use case. And unfortunately, you see in many of the big breaches and the big data losses, those kind of infrastructural systems and critical systems are used as a stepping stone in the kill chain by the bad actor towards the business data. Other use cases that and areas of applicability that we have engagement with customers are in their DMZs, where they have very, very hostile and very exposed compute, whether that be their web servers, their API servers, their email gateways, their single sign-on agents, and so forth. And then we're also engaged with a set of customers that have what you would think is more traditional hostile compute. That might be, an oil and gas company that have, compute and servers out at oil rigs and refineries where it's not their plant, it's not their people, it's not their IT infrastructure, it's not their network. So obviously those servers and those workloads are under a constant attack, and they have no other way of kind of protecting those workloads.
So if we dig a little deeper there, I know we were told not to, but I'm just curious. I mean, so if I'm a customer, how much am I going to have to replace? I mean, is this a disruptive process? I mean, how much is involved for me to invest in this and get you guys up and running?
So we've we've been very careful to make the solution as easy to use and easy to adopt as possible. Actually, it's back at the beginning of Skyport, we really thought very, very deeply about the enterprise IT stack and security in all its aspects, but including the security operators and the security personnel. And it was mentioned earlier, the truth is we are short of well qualified and educated security operations folks. So I think not just for Skyport, but any security solution going forward, ease of use and ease of adoption has to be job number one. It has to be. Otherwise, you can't get traction, and your customers don't have the staff and the people to be able to adopt your solution. I would say that with regard to adoption, there's a set of critical workloads and critical infrastructure in any enterprise IT organization that represents but a small percentage of the compute that an enterprise might have overall. Skyport at the moment is really focused on those kind of critical systems that might be somewhere between 3 and 5% of the servers and the compute inside an enterprise. And we've made it extremely easy to adopt and to onboard workloads one at a time, where you can secure and you can verify the security and the visibility around that workload, and then you can move on to the next workload.
So looking ahead a little bit, this is obviously an ever-changing landscape. There's a lot going on in the cybersecurity world, and as we saw, there are a number of people here that are at companies that are early stage or maybe thinking about going forward. I mean, what's your advice in terms of where people should be investing their time right now in this space? If they're interested in cybersecurity, how do they break this down in terms of where they should be? What kinds of companies? I mean, where would they be wanting to?
It's a very interesting question. For me, I would always start on first principles with regard to the reality of enterprise IT and the reality of the security domain. Certainly, different customers, different enterprises have different sensitivity with regard to their security needs. I would say just through the last 12 months of customer conversations, the focus on security and the realization that it is mission critical for pretty much all businesses has been a big shift. I would say, 12 months ago, I'd speak to customers and they're like, I'm a small hedge fund. Why do I care about cybersecurity? I'm a small retailer. Why do I care? I would say today it's been a big shift across those 12 months that really everyone cares. With regard to starting off an effort, I would always look at first principles and look at the most basic needs that your target customer base would have. I'd look at the competition, look at the kind of changing landscape, and also look at how you can integrate your solution into what the enterprise might have actually operating at the moment to make your solution as easy to adopt and easy to insert into the market.
We keep hearing almost daily or weekly now about just massive breaches that are in the headlines over and over again. What's your vision for this? Is this something that's just going to be our new reality? Are we going to get a lead on this from happening? Is this going to start to slow down, or are we just in this world where now basically we're just too exposed and we're never going to catch up?
It's a good question. I would say we are at the moment exposed, I would say, and the success and the scale of the breaches and the financial rewards of the breaches over the last 12 to 18 months certainly has encouraged a whole new set of bad actors and technologists that produce the very, very clever and complicated and sophisticated technology that the bad actors use to go and commit these kinds of breaches and crimes. That said, I do see that the pendulum will ultimately swing back towards the good guys. That is going to have to be driven by technology, by integrated solutions, by smarter software, by better operational procedures, better training, and better practices inside of enterprise. What it will not do, in my opinion, is it won't drive us backwards from an IT evolution or a business evolution. We are not going to disconnect. I mean, some customers that I do talk to, they do talk about that. They talk about, well, we'll just disconnect, or we're not going to connect in the first place. You get some conservative customers, that are laggards from a connectedness point of view. I just don't see that happening. It's very interesting. I was talking to my sister the other day. She's a VP of innovation at one of Ireland's banks, and she's running a project right now to look at every system, every application that they have, and kind of get ready for the next phase of business. And you know, when I was talking to her, she was pretty kind of down. She's like, I'm not sure in the next generation we're going to have any customers, because the change between their current customers and the next generation is just so dramatic. And I see that with my own children, right? We pick restaurants by their Wi-Fi connectivity. You know, we pick airlines by how connected they are. You know, it's their patience. It's just incredible, right? So you know, as humans, as a generational effect, we have embraced, and we're going to continue to embrace, a very connected, very online, very kind of instant gratification reality. And I think enterprises, to do business with that generation, are going to have to continue down that road. So we're not going to disconnect, but what we are going to do is we're going to develop more innovative and more capable solutions to solve these problems and to be able to secure ourselves more effectively. And that will ebb it back to our favor, and you'll then see the wave of breaches kind of ebb off.
It's good, an optimistic view. That's fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Michael.